you first, right? And I'll just chip in after you, right? Yeah. I'm with Flo.
To NAP, the Nexus Art Project.
And this week we have Damon Sawyer and Kim Cypher. Aha!
Hello and welcome to Nexus Art Project podcast.
The NAP! And we have a couple of illustrious, glorious, hat-bearing guests.
Wonderful guests, Kim Cypher and Damon Sawyer.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thanks for having
to the
us.
piano room.
This is amazing.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
The vibe is good. I feel very cosy.
The green room is really welcoming. It's full of knowledge and coffee.
Lots of knowledge.
Coffee and
astronomy knowledge.
We've had a little Christmas party and everything beforehand.
Already,
It's been
yeah.
lovely.
Before the
crackers.
Yeah. Welcome to the Nexus Art Project. It's a real pleasure to have you guys here.
Thanks for having us.
Where we celebrate the arts, what is happening in the world of arts today. Our guests are prolific musicians, both Kim and Damon. Kim Cypher is one of the most exciting, UK's most exciting saxophonists and singers, vocalists, composers, radio hosts.
Oh.
Kim, you're very busy.
Thank you.
Jazz pizzazz extraordinary.
Oh, jazz pizzazz. Jazz hand time.
Absolutely. And you only just a few hours before this, you played a gig as well?
We've done a gig today, yes. A rather stressful, not a typical gig today, but yes, a gig. And here's gig number 2.
Well, you came out the other end of it, so it's a good gig at the
The
end.
show must go on, as they say, yes. And we've had a good time.
And Damon, I mean, you've made your way around here today after what have you been doing up this recent week?
Well, last few weeks have been really busy. Lots of sessions, lots more jazz sessions and live shoots in the studio, which has been great. Today I managed to get a lot of jobs done in the studio, so there's albums finishing off.
Yes.
I finished the mastering job today. So yeah, plenty still going on. Plenty to
Where
do.
do we
Brilliant.
start with these guys? Really?
Damon, you're a drummer, you're a music producer, you're a creator of Sound of Tomorrow at Crescent Record Studios.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow Sound, yes.
Tomorrow Sound today.
Yes. Right here, right now.
Because
Catchphrase
possibilities are endless, right?
Beautiful.
So maybe we can start at the beginning and chat with you guys about how did you get into the arts, into your art. Maybe we can start with Kim, what got you into your art? How did it start?
Well, I think it's always been in me, sort of, it's in our heart and soul, isn't it? Creative people. And I remember being given a recorder, like all children are at the age of 7 or whatever. Yeah, and everybody goes, oh no, she's got a recorder. But I actually loved it, and can sort of instinctively play it. And then it was the same with piano, and then I got a clarinet as well, and I kind of had a sort of an instinct of sort of how to play it, and it was almost like it was sort of just within me.
Natural.
So yeah, I think it was just naturally kind of within me, and obviously it helped. I was brought up in a family where we listened to a lot of music as well, a lot of big band music.
Can I ask, was it a musical home?
It was. I mean, my mum and my dad were not musicians, although my dad was a drummer in the Boys Brigade, but they loved music. So there was always music playing, a lot of Glenn Miller, big band music, that kind of thing, James Last, all of that sort of going on. And I just fell in love with it. But I think I really, really found my love for it when I got the saxophone, which didn't come till a little bit later on. But once I kind of got that instrument, I definitely felt sort of like, oh yes, I am definitely home now. So yeah, I just love
Wonderful. And any particular inspirations for the saxophone, or artists that, or any single event maybe that kind of...
So many, so many inspirations. Where do you start? I mean, Andy Shepherd was a huge inspiration, still is to me. Pee Wee Ellis as well as another one. He was obviously musical director for James Brown.
Yeah,
and you actually
yeah.
got to work with him.
Well, I did. I mean, I still have to pinch myself really with that. Yeah, pinch me. Have I worked with Pee Wee Ellis?
Somebody who worked with James Brown.
I know. I mean, I never in a million years thought that. I used to listen to his music, and he was funky. That's what I got me into. The passion of music was the funky sound. And he was just a huge inspiration. And then, one day I was lucky enough to find myself studying with him, which led to me working with him and writing music to perform with him, and him being on my album and on my album tour. So it really was a dream come true. But, lots of other sax players as well, like Courtney Pine, Barbara Thompson, who inspired me as a female saxophonist and band leader back in the day. Leading the way, showing me that as a female, I can do it.
But also how amazing, because you said that he inspired you, Pee Wee Ellis, and then years later, obviously, you ended up working with him.
Yeah.
And how inspiring it is, that the dreams can be achieved. What inspires you could actually come back and say thank you in the future, because he actually said about you, the true heart and soul performer.
Yeah. Oh, bless him. Well, we got on really well. We got on literally like a house on fire, and people like that, they want you, they want to give you their knowledge, and they want to inspire you, and they get very proud when they see people kind of, following in their footsteps.
If you're taking it
Yes.
on.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? And so we just literally got on like a house on fire, and he was absolutely incredible, and I owe him so much. So yeah, he'll always be a huge inspiration.
And Damon, you worked with Pee Wee Ellis as well.
I did as well, yeah.
Wow,
yeah, it was really cool.
He's such a nice guy.
He's lovely, absolute diamond. I played with, I was in a house band, so Paul Jones, that used to do the BBC Radio 2 Blues Show.
Yeah.
Every year he does a big charity concert down south at a lovely theatre, and I was in the house band for that. And then Pee Wee was on the lineup, so I ended up in the afternoon. I met Pee Wee, and then we rehearsed a couple of tunes. Which was
just
fantastic.
Like
To rehearse a couple of tunes, to rehearse them alone.
well, let's say we top and tailed them, and then later on with Denny, Denny Arnold as well.
Yeah.
So Denny's big band album and
Denny Electric.
the Electric Ladyland's big band, and we recorded that album. Well, 2 albums we've done at Crescent.
Yeah.
And on the first album, Pee Wee was a guest, so Pee Wee came to the studio. Yeah.
I mean, we have to rewind a little bit on that. I mean, we were saying what inspired you, and what you had music in the house, all big bands was going on, and you had a recorder.
Yeah.
So you annoyed everybody in the house until you had to really, and then you got their attention, right? I mean, what was it for you then, Damien? I mean, you were hitting things and doing things and whacking things.
I'll tell you the start of it, and I remember this really
well. Was you on doing things?
No, what I did, I used to get knitting needles.
Oh.
And I could still picture the box, because I used to like discos as well. And I had this, I remember, I can see the box now, disco lights, empty box, just holes throughout the whole thing, because I would just beat the hell out of it with these knitting needles, which eventually I think I had a toy drum kit.
And how old were you then when you were?
I was actually having lessons and playing from when I was 11. So I'm figuring the boxes would have been much earlier than that. So I'm going to guess 6, 7, 8 maybe, you know.
The box distraction
the
stage.
boxes. But I definitely I just thought drums was amazing. I just remember, and I remember there was a guy down the road. I thought he was so cool. He had a drum kit, a full-size drum kit, and I remember going around there. And he played it, and just the sound and the projection of that, you know, it was just immense. So eventually, as I say, lessons from 11. A jazz drummer used to come round to the house, and what I do remember is some of the lessons weren't even on the kit, because they'd be teaching me to read and stuff. Yeah. And we would literally do it. He'd have a coffee, sit next to me on the coffee table, playing on a practice pad and reading, you know. Bill Castle. I don't know if you know Bill Castle. I don't. Lovely jazz. He used to have a big band. In fact, one night, I do remember this as well. He took me to a rehearsal. Would you like to come to rehearsal? I was like, yeah, big band, amazing.
And you were how old?
Well, I'm going to guess then I was probably 12.
Okay, so you just started
out.
lessons.
Yeah. And he said, do you want to come? And I just thought that was amazing. And you know, Mum let me go. That was really cool. But I remember being really late back, because it was an evening rehearsal in the back room of a pub.
With the Smoky Joe guys.
Well, it was that far back. So it was proper. I was going to say rock and roll, but it was proper big band jazz, and it was awesome. And obviously learnt a lot, and you know, witnessed all that live big band, you know, for real. But yeah, I don't think I got home till like 11:30, midnight, which for a 12-year-old was quite late. And I do remember Mum kind of being, you're back then.
Normal.
Nice to see you.
And yeah, that was the start of many late nights.
Love that.
But no, that was the early years of me playing, you know, and having those regular lessons, and then in the end, probably by the time I was about 16, I ended up teaching myself, and I was giving drum lessons. I started a drum school. I do remember at one point I had 45 students on the books. You know, they weren't well, that was quite, you know, for that time. It was, and they weren't always every week. It was like a 2-week rotation, and people of all ages. And later on, I ended up teaching more adults. You know, more sort of advanced players.
You've really obviously had an impact on quite a lot of musicians when you think.
I hope so. That'd be nice.
For sure.
I certainly met a lot of you know, interesting people, and some people are still in the business. And there was one guy called Barney who I taught drums for probably 3 or 4 years. You know, he ended up working in my first studio as well, and he stayed in the business, not necessarily directly as a drummer, although he's a great drummer and he still plays now. But he ended up being a drum tech. Yeah. And he ended up teching for Charlie Watts and the Rolling Stones and the Killers.
You know, that's I mean, your little resume.
I'd get messages and calls from him. It's like, how's it going? I'm at Madison Square Garden, you know, and then he'd send me a picture or a video, and I'd be like,
and how do I buy this thing? Can you remember?
No, he was very cool. He was very cool by then. He knew his stuff. But yeah, that's great. And what's really nice is, even though that was years ago, we're still friends, and we still speak, and I'm still aware. I mean, he's got a studio now. He's settled down in Devon, and you know, he's doing a lot of library music and writing himself. You know,
well, you've obviously had an impact on him. I mean, this is obviously why the relationship's still there. A long time on, which is fabulous. Really, when you're involved in music as well, and you've been in there, like you said yourself, Kim, since a child, really, and it becomes something. Even though sometimes we work for a living, in that process of trying to get in there with the music, sometimes it's not so easy. I mean, you've been a professional musician for, almost since day dot, haven't you, more or less?
I started. I remember I was 13 when I first started earning money from music. You know,
wow,
which was quite weird. And I do remember trotting down the golf club, and I remember buying my first Pringle jumper, which was. Pretty expensive.
Casuals,
with
casuals back then,
you know,
with a roll neck, no doubt. Okay.
And that's where it started. And I had one day job. I worked at a hospital in Ascot from 16 to 20, and that's the only kind of straightforward day job that I had. And then when I left there at 20, I'm 52 now, and I've just done music ever since. Which we know it's a difficult business. We know it's up and down, but I'm quite happy with the fact that you know that's all I've done.
Yeah.
You know, albeit
You're still here.
well, still here. You know.
And obviously there are different levels of what you do. You are a drummer, so that's an instrumentalist. You're a producer, a music producer. You taught. Do you still teach?
I don't teach as much now. It's a bit difficult. I mean, the studio's really busy, and I still manage to play in that as well. But teaching, I mean, now and then, if I get a call, and often it's normally from someone that has a specific need, and maybe it's like, oh, Damien, I've got a gig coming up, and I'd like to, concentrate on a set.
Like a mentorship kind of.
And I really like that, and maybe someone will book an hour or two, and we could just really hone in on what they would need out of that. And then on away they go, and that's okay. But I can't really commit anymore to regular lessons. It's just
And would you
really
say that the teaching has the teaching affected or impacted in any way that the way you worked in the studio as the music producer?
I think for sure. I think I mean you learn so much teaching and just about people and also. I believe everyone learns, and you teach as well, don't you?
So
I don't
you were a
anymore.
teacher, you
Yeah.
were the music head of music.
Well, I was back in the day. I don't teach
In
anymore.
Gloucestershire?
In Gloucestershire, yeah.
So I think what I realised quite early on is how everyone learns differently. And some people it's a kind of oral thing, and some people, and some people you
especially
literally have to
drummers,
sit
right?
there. Yeah, and that helped me as well. I think because when you're producing, I mean, let's face it, all musicians are a bit insecure, right? We're all insecure, and then everyone feels that pressure in the studio instantly. I mean, it's quite an intimidating place.
It is,
It's a big room, especially at Crescent. We've got that
Absolutely,
9-foot grand piano.
It's
fantastic.
It is an amazing recording room and a beautiful, grand piano.
I'm very lucky
Present Records,
to be running that, and it's, it's really really nice to do it. But I think that's really directly helped me in that, and to work with people and understand how you can actually converse with people and try and help them through that journey,
And even
which could be stressful, right? But
and even
let's
to
try and make it
listen,
not
because
stressful.
we kind of hear music differently, especially if we are producing the music at the time of making the sound. It's very different how you listen to something when it is not you actually playing, right? And I remember because I had a great honor working with you at Crescent, recording.
We had lovely sessions. It was great.
Yeah, The Doors, and then beginning of my piano album. And I have learned such a great deal, even on that first session that we recorded The Doors, and we actually didn't record it. We didn't produce a recording, right? We had to do another. Yes.
Yeah.
I remember walking away and thinking, my goodness, in the 3 hours I've learned so much, and it's always about this listening and also breathing. The breathing lesson.
Very important.
Well, it's about being in control and being relaxed as well as anything else. And I also think the pressure on the artist to perform, especially in the studio, it's difficult for the artist to really analyse. I can analyse. I can sit behind a desk, comfortable, and it's easy for me to kind of listen to that from a different angle. Do you agree? Whereas if for the artist and that pressure, sometimes that's why I think a lot of people need a producer around.
Because at some point you almost can't hear it.
You can't hear it. So someone else's feedback and someone else's perception is really important like that. And also just some support,
This is why I said to you, unless you're coming out of that booth saying this is awesome, I'm not going to stop recording.
I mean, we got a recording of yours just there. What have you just been recently recording, Kim? You've been recently.
Well,
you've been doing so much. You've been
working on your new album.
I have been working on my new album. It feels like it's been a long time coming because it sort of started back in lockdown, really, when I think a lot of creative people, we became quite prolific in our composing, didn't we? As we sort of poured all our emotions into our music. So I have been in the studio recording that. It's been quite a difficult album to work out logistically, because I've got a lot of special guests on it. So I couldn't just go in a studio for a day and say, right, I'm going to do my album.
And they're quite special.
It's a long project, you know. So I've had to sort of go to London and record with like Leanne Carroll at the 606 Club.
Like you do.
I had to go to the 606 Club.
Yes, I had to go to the 606 Club. You know, and it's been a very long project, you know, then bring in my next special guest, do a few tracks with them, and then take a break and then bring in my next one, you know. So it's been a long project. But it's interesting what you say, because I do find, I mean, I love going into the studio, but it's exhausting.
I get switched on in the studio.
I do.
I don't know about you. There's something electric about
But
that
it is-
finality that you're coming up
There's
to.
no
Yes.
better place to be for me. You know?
But it's
Love it.
it's really
Exhausting
interesting
as
because
well.
you do need people. To be honest, I mean, I've been working with Juan from Swindon
I know,
also
yeah,
for a very long time, but he's very honest. You know, because with me, I mean, I like to get down a take, you know, that you think, okay.
Is that Lopez? Is that
Yeah.
Juanjo
Yeah,
Vidal.
Juan Lopez
Van
Vidal.
Vidal, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Juanjo.
we've met him. He came up to the show.
Yes.
Argentinian, yeah, he's great.
Hello,
guy.
Juanjo, if you're
Yes,
watching
hello,
us.
Juan.
Have a lovely Sunday.
But he's very honest with me, you know, so he'd tell me how it is. But once I've kind of got a safe takedown, I'm kind of okay, because it's like, okay.
Because you relax a bit.
Yeah,
then,
we've got a safe takedown, so that's good. But I think that's when the magic happens, because then it's like, okay, we've got that little safety net.
Comfort
Now
zone.
let's just kind
Got
of
the
go.
lowest common
Yes.
denominator.
Yeah.
Now let's
But the exhaustion
right.
surely would come through the fact that when we are in the studio and we know that we need to put everything into it,
Absolutely.
and it's like this: you practiced something many times, and this time you have to put all of this feeling
Yeah.
into it, and
Absolutely.
everything in maximum concentration.
Yeah.
So in the end, it's gonna be exhausting. I mean, in a
exhausting.
good way.
Yeah.
You will feel like you've done a
Everybody's
good
different
job,
though,
but
aren't they?
Yeah.
You know, everybody's got a different coping mechanism, and they have these ways of getting into the zone. Some people
Yeah.
not going to condone it, but some people they might have a couple of shots of their favourite tickle, or some of them do a different thing. It could be yoga, it could be, but something can lead them into that little special place.
Yeah, that
Sometimes
little
they need
zone.
really geeing up. Depends what the music is, and
Yeah.
what the album is, and what material we're doing.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, so let's
So
rewind a little bit, because we got a bit of an idea of the start, what got you into, you know, your artist line on your path. And was there anything, say from the woman's perspective, so coming in playing saxophone, getting into the music industry? Because I know so you're a professional musician now.
yeah, and you're a
You were-
full-time musician.
Yeah.
What
performer.
were you doing before? What did you do? Obviously, you were obviously doing something to pay the bills, feed yourself, buy the dresses, buy the beautiful necklaces and the lovely hats, right? On the fancy saxophones, they cost money, and so
They do.
to be able to do that, what did you do?
Well, it's an interesting one, because I mean, I knew from an early age that all I really wanted to do was music, you know, but when I was at school, it wasn't really considered to be a path for a career. So, you know, when I had my careers advice, I was basically told, you know, to go into banking or insurance. And it's like, but I'm a musician. Yeah, but you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I didn't want to go into banking or insurance, so that was never an option. But so anyway, I kind of ended up going into teaching, because I thought, well, the next best thing is to be a music teacher, which I did. And I was quite lucky, because it was quite unique, because I worked in a primary school, but I was head of music, which was quite a unique position, because normally head of music is normally in secondary schools. So I actually loved my job, because I worked with 7 to 11-year-olds, and I just taught music, and I have to say I absolutely
It's the perfect age,
loved
isn't
it.
it, to be teaching?
Beautiful. And they loved the music, you know. But my husband, Mike Cypher, who's a drummer,
Hi, Mike.
he's
in
out
the
there.
room.
He didn't quite fit in, did he? He's a big guy. But he was a bank manager as well. And I mean, we both knew that music was in our heart and our soul. So we basically had our music running alongside our careers all the time. So we'd be doing our jobs during the day, and then we'd be gigging by night, gigging at the weekend,
We know how
travelling.
this feels,
Yeah.
don't we,
Yes,
darling?
absolutely.
Well, there you
Hard
get
work,
it.
yeah.
But I remember, you know, I remember specifically actually one Monday morning just going into work thinking, this is a nightmare, you know, I haven't got in till the early hours of the morning. I'm absolutely shattered. All the children are hyper and manic. We want to do music, you know, and all that. And I just thought, you know, and Mike was the same with his job. And we had the conversation that, you know, something's got to give. So what's
It's
it
not
going to
gonna
be?
the music, is it?
Well, everybody said,
Yeah.
well, you know, you've got secure careers. So don't get me wrong. You know, we had secure incomes. We had company car. We had private health. We had everything that people think
Oh, it's
life
powerful.
is about. And actually for us, that isn't what life's about. So we were like, well, no, what's going to give is the day jobs.
You were not being your true self, were you? That's the
No,
written...
and it's interesting because we kind of touched on it earlier on, you know, about like creative people, and I feel at home when I'm with fellow creatives. You know, like tonight, you know, I get it. I'm with you completely. We're all the same. We're a family, aren't we?
Yes.
There's
And
a vibration. It's as soon as you come in the room and we'd not met before, but all within moments we were...
Because we get it.
Vibing
way,
and we were
yeah.
feeling the same excitement. Even though
Exactly.
we know we're coming on to do this, there is this sort of... And it is.
It's a
true. It's
connection
and the
eyes
passion.
It is. And I felt, I
Delisha.
don't know, I mean, as much as I love my teaching job, and don't get me wrong, I worked with wonderful people, and one of my best friends, you know, was from there, but I felt like a fish out of water, you know, and people didn't get me, they didn't understand what I was about, because they weren't creatives. And there's nothing wrong with that, but, you know, the minute we gave up our day jobs and we became musicians, whilst we were very, very scared, and we had to be on a mission to prove people wrong, because everybody said, oh my goodness, you're mad. You know, we'd come home and it's like, okay, well, we've just got to make this work, you know, we just need to get gigs because, you know, you've just got to work, haven't you? And it is hard work, honestly.
And you have worked incredibly hard. So many things you've done. I mean, please tell us about the Great Jazz, Big Jazz Hullabaloo show.
Well,
how did that start?
Well, so we were chatting earlier, weren't we, about COVID and the lockdown, the pandemic, you know, which was a nightmare for everybody, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But
Some saw it as a nightmare. I think a number of us, like we were saying, we saw it as an
Yeah.
opportunity.
Also an
right? I mean,
opportunity.
you saw
Well,
it as one, right?
well, I did, and I've said quite a few times to people that actually I once I'd kind of got over the shock, because it was a shock, wasn't it, and like a panic of, oh my goodness, you know, how is this going to work? How are we going to pay our bills? I kind of embraced it. I loved having the time at home with Mike, and I've got rabbits, my little bunny family. And it was great. And I mean, like you, because I know you did things online during the pandemic, one of the things I just thought was I needed to keep my sense of identity, and I needed to keep connected with people, you know, and I needed to keep
At the
the
time
music
that people
playing.
really needed connection.
Absolutely.
More than ever.
Yeah. So I said to Mike, well, let's just go every day, 11 o'clock, let's just go live on air, just chat, just get people to come along, we'll just have a coffee and we'll just chat. And, you know, it was a community that grew and grew and grew. And I'm still friends with people from that community.
Same.
yeah.
We did something at 7 o'clock every day. It was, you know,
It's
we
brilliant.
made sure we didn't clash with what you were doing. We didn't want to be...
I was going to say, if you'd have done it at 11, I'd have had to say, hold on.
Cramping each other's style. I mean, what did you... Just on the same note there, Kim, what did you do then, Damien? Because you got into lots of stuff online because you're into the tech side of things. So this would have played right into your hands, wouldn't it? I would have thought, you know.
Well,
obviously, initially.
I mean, the first thing I noticed was I was just blown away by all the live stuff that people, you know, the collaboration people were doing, you know, and it was fantastic. And you could see, and even people, and you know, often if I say I play drums or anything, I've always wanted to play drums, you know, and I always think instantly, I think, well, why not then? You know, because sometimes, but of course you realise everyone's in their day-to-day lives, busy, hustle bustle. But really, the good thing about that, you know, obviously as we've agreed, there was a lot of bad, but people had time then to suddenly go, you know, you could either sit there twiddling your thumbs, or you could do the things that.
And they had the time to delve into themselves.
Exactly. We're already established and working and busy. We're then collaborating, right, to keep busy, you know, keep the mind active, and I just think some of the videos. I mean, I still watch them now. It's just fantastic. And the energy, innovative, and you know, I mean, I still, when we could, I still had a lot of sessions, and oddly, I mean, you know, when we could work in the studio under whatever the conditions were, you know, people were booking up and kind of, you know, spending their size money in a way, you know, and just pushing that towards
a bit more
I'm going to
thrown in, a bit more kind of
passion,
worth.
And there was I mean, we did some great albums throughout that time, you know. And obviously it was more restricted, and it was different timescales and that. But people got round to doing those things that they'd been, you know, totally putting
wanting
off
to do for a while.
You know, and I think now coming out of the other side of it, what we've got is, you know, a different appreciation. I think people are respecting more, you know, in the amount of work and effort.
Definitely.
That actually goes into.
And also, I mean, it's like theatre shows now. I mean, I've been doing loads of theatre tours over the last few years, and it's great, and I love doing that around the UK. And you kind of see audience maybe pre-COVID going up and down a bit, you know. But I think post-COVID, there's a lot of shows out there, right? And sometimes it's overwhelming. You think, oh, Christ, and all these people that I know are all out on tour, we're all on the road working. It's fantastic. But then you look, and it's like that's a lot of audience, right?
Yeah.
But they're there.
Yeah.
There seems to be an audience that has suddenly hunger for it. I mean, we were all seemingly, you know, we come out of COVID and everyone's thinking, oh, it's not going to be there. A lot of the artists were cancelling tours, they weren't performing. And I think there was an undercurrent of, we'll call the underground artists were like, hey, well, this is our time. I mean, I was like looking at it as an opportunity. It's something you get out of the way. You can play at these venues, and there's a lot of the big artists weren't playing. So we started to get out and play around and everything else. I mean, we were lucky. We did a bit of Glastonbury and some of the festivals, and then suddenly it kicks in, and it's blooming. Yeah. I mean, the scene. I mean, Swindon's got an amazing scene. Yeah, people took it down in his time. We talked in in the last show. A couple of artists, you know, Billy was here and Ellis from Swindon. I mean, you know, this place is blooming. Everywhere you look, every other street, there's a really talented artist, really someone who's really cutting edge. If you see all the art painted on these murals,
beautiful murals across town.
Yeah, the town's starting to get
there's a
some
buzz. There's
real
a good
buzz.
There's
when there's been a real negative one about it for 20 plus more years. I mean, it used to be this. It was quite a self-secure town. Everybody was working. Quite secure in the work and everything else, and the music scene in the town was quite, I'm going to call it microwave meal fed. There was quite there's a lot of covers bands, which is a healthy scene, and there's a number of great bands that have come from this town, XTC, and you know the
I worked with Dave Gregory a few weeks ago,
and so we know some of these guys, but the town really seems to have had a bit of a lull over a period, but there's a lot of artists that are doing things, trying to break through that glass scene, and I'm sure you've probably worked with a number of them. You are probably destined to work with some of them.
Ooh, how exciting.
Well, no doubt. We're on the cusp, and we'll be playing with you later. Whatever we're at.
Yeah, speaking of work and obviously how the arts potentially gained through COVID, and we're looking at the glass half full, obviously. You know, how did you come through in your creativity? You were working throughout COVID, making music, collaborating and
many. We did some research on you, didn't we? And we were just
some
like,
research.
hang on,
We've got a file on you.
What have you found out?
We did the same with you, Damon, as well. We was looking through, thinking, well, we don't even need to write that name down. They've worked with this person, that person, Pee-wee,
and the net
and
is
with
just
Muddy
spreading.
Waters, and we've got. You know, I mean, you've both worked with Pee-wee, right? I mean,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
God rest his soul.
Because you started the Big Jazz Hullabaloo radio show, and this is actually just now been celebrating
50th show.
50th show.
Well,
was it last week?
I mean, you couldn't write it. I mean, this is what we were saying about COVID and how it took us in different directions that we probably wouldn't have had time to go down if it hadn't been for the pandemic. But we were doing this little coffee and chat show every day. And I remember one morning, this was when you could sort of mix a little bit, because they kept lifting the restrictions, didn't they? And I remember getting a call one morning from BBC Points West Television saying, we've heard about your coffee and chat show, could we come and film you doing the coffee and chat show? This is like 10 minutes before we're going on air, and I'm thinking, I've got no makeup on, it was like, okay. And I just remember, it was so bizarre, because this guy, actually we knew the guy, it was Steve Nibbs, who's like a reporter for BBC Points West, and he came in and he sort of filmed us doing our show, and I wish I'd had more time to sort of put lipstick on and stuff, but hey ho. But this is kind of what I was saying about, things happened then, we got this community going, and then before we knew it, we were asked by Jazz Bites Radio, which is a worldwide jazz radio station, if we would host our own radio show, and it was like,
brilliant.
Oh, yes, okay. Yeah. I mean, it was something that in my mind I'd always kind of thought, that would be great, to host your own radio show. But in reality, I wouldn't have known, where to start.
So where did you start?
Well, so, I mean, we said yes. And then it was a very quick learning curve, because obviously we do it from home, because the Jazz Bites Radio is actually based in Canada. So we have to record everything at home. So I had to very quickly, learn GarageBand and, know how to put the tracks in and how to speak and everything into that. And we've just celebrated our 50th show.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Veteran.
And it's very exciting because the show is very popular apparently, and in fact next year they're going to launch a best of the Big Jazz Hullabaloo, where they're going to run the best of our shows sort of like continuously across their
I love the name.
radio show.
Hullabaloo.
Well, we were like,
fun.
they said think of a name, and we were like, oh gosh, I don't know. We sort of brainstormed a lot
It's
of
always
names,
difficult, isn't it?
but we decided, well, Mike is going to be the Big Jazz for obvious reasons, and I was going to be the Hullabaloo for obvious
Because
reasons.
you bring a bit of hullabaloo.
I
Well,
do.
There you go.
Yeah, so he's the Big Jazz and I'm the Hullabaloo, so the Big Jazz Hullabaloo. It's perfect.
So what? How did you come out when you come out? Just literally stepping out the COVID thing, I suppose, as we're arming ourselves with post-COVID kind of challenges and directions, I suppose, pathways. What's been flavouring your boat? What's been on your agenda?
Since then, my agenda has mainly been to one of my main passions is to connect the pro audio world with the hi-fi industry. So I'm a bit of a self-confessed audiophile, which is kind of quite strange because most pro audio guys don't really cross over. Mostly, I'm generalising, I know, but mostly that's not. You know, they seem to be very separate things, and a lot of different approaches. You know, for the audiophile industry against the pro, but there's a lot of things that I really want to connect, and this year's been great for that. So basically, we've been doing hi-fi events at the studio. There's quite a big company called Acoustic Energy, which probably they're based not too far from you, and they're releasing a £6,000 speaker, which is gorgeous, and we've just done the promo advert at the studio for that. So
It's not one of these spherical looking.
It's not
objects,
spherical.
is it?
It's not
I mean,
spherical, but they are very nice. And they do racing green as well,
Okay,
which is
Oh,
pretty cool.
well, now
Some
you
of
go.
this high-end
It's-
audio is.
a lot of it's
I mean,
quite-
so is this more? Is this not just say for the recording side, but more say some of the relationship between the artists that you're recording? Because obviously the kit we're using in the studio. I mean, if you're recording saxophone, you've got sax. You want to get the best sax. So I mean, are you talking about there being like a standard between? Because obviously you've got speakers or you've got microphones that work in certain frequencies and everything else, and that's more your realm, right? I mean,
Yeah, really. I mean, at Crescent, it's a high-res studio, so we're recording everything. Don't laugh, anyone. We're recording at 384K, which basically mostly people are kind of doing 44, 48, or maybe 96. And the odd person may be doing 192. I don't think there's many people recording at 384. And really what you get is exactly what you were saying about like micing up a saxophone, for example. What I'm really trying to do is actually capture the very timbre of the instrument, that natural sound. So when you hear an instrument in a room, like that piano there,
Yes.
I want to capture that as honestly as possible.
less bad sound or interference.
Just no interference. That's great. I'm glad you said that.
And
'cause
just
one of the
how
things-
difficult is it?
Now you would think it would be easy, wouldn't you?
No.
Unfortunately, it's not. And there's a lot of things to think about. And one of the main enemies when you want true, hi-fi sound or high-res sound is noise, RFI, radio frequency interference, which is getting worse and worse because of Wi-Fi. That's
Devices.
one
all
of the
the
things. And
digital kind of interferences.
Exactly.
Like things, yeah. So how do you block that out? Is that what you're using special equipment to block that out?
not necessarily special equipment, but there are a lot of ways to deal with that. And there's a kind of I try not to go too deep in the weeds with this because everyone will
try
be
us.
glassing over. But I'll try. You can always say stop now.
No, well, for
Zip it.
those listening or watching, this is all integral.
Well-
We're trying to get the best out of what we do as artists, and when it comes to getting our stuff recorded, I mean, you've been as a musician right through to this point, and obviously you're passionate enough. So
Very passionate about it. Very passionate about it. So, the first point of battle really is the outlet at the wall. So as the electricity comes in, that's already full of noise because you get contamination from everywhere else. All kinds of things are contaminated, as well as in the actual room and in the environment of the equipment itself. So there's noise emanating everywhere, and it's easy to test. If you could be bothered to actually get an RFI meter, you could get a little pen and literally just point and press the button. It will give you a reading, and then you can see as you move around how much there is, you know, and trust me, it's everywhere. Wow. And one of the worst places for this is actually the computer.
Yeah.
Which is where we all record, right? Because, let's face it, old analog tape reels, there's few and far between now. So I have to deal. Now, obviously, I can't. There's a massive argument against dealing with this RFI because people say some of these cables and ways of dealing with it can be really expensive, okay, and often it's sneered at and it's like, oh, it's snake oil. It's not snake oil. It does work. And people's first argument is, surely you can't. It's impossible to deal with because you need to start at the substation, at the power station itself. All those thousands of miles.
There's no point in spending thousands of pounds on that cable at your guitar if you're plugging it all the way down. So you've got to do it right from source all the way through. So that's where I suppose they're looking at expense.
That's where they're thinking about it. But actually, you can actually battle with it, and you can start at the outlet.
By filtering it.
Filtering
through the cable.
All kinds of different ways, and grounding, earth grounding, chassis grounding. And so basically, to try and keep things fairly simple, there's a way of doing it with proper screened cables. Some of these things are affordable, some of them are pretty out there.
How expensive are those cables?
Let's say we could start at
how much?
we could start at £50 for a half a metre cable. We could go up to thousands. There are power cables that are literally, I mean, I've held a 10 grand, £10,000 power cable.
Is that what the Crescent Studios has kind of made its kind of whole ethos is around that, being so meticulous about all of those aspects, so that every aspect, so every plug socket has got that in mind, and so I suppose the science you've probably the acoustics engineers are all set in, and it's all I've tried to deal with every element, because if you could deal with literally from the mic and from the microphone cable to the actual computer and beyond, if you deal with that all the way through, it is amazing what can happen. And do you know what? How did Matt do today?
I haven't.
Very nice cables.
I'm on a night off tonight. I'm not. It feels all really good. Hopefully everyone can hear us nicely.
Yeah.
But really, and it's also make because it all sounds very sort of technical and very deep. But really, the primary thing about this is, while hearing that instrument as it should be, is to connect emotionally with the people. So obviously there's emotion coming from the player, and that's really why I'm doing. I'm not doing it because I'm geeking out. Cables are cables. I'm not stupid.
Emotion is lost when it's through poor recording.
Precisely, and that's the connection. And do you know what? And I've often said this, and take this what you will, but I think the best reaction to playing a track to someone is if you make someone cry.
Oh, yeah, which I do every time on my album. I'm with you. If you don't cry, there's something wrong.
That's really...
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say that, but I don't necessarily mean it's not cry, tears of despair. It's tears of joy.
Yeah, I do it every time.
And gratitude.
You just feel when it's right, it's right.
I believe it's possible to connect people like that.
Definitely.
And that's why, as technical as it is, I kind of want to... I'll deal with that. So when people come in, hopefully... And in fact, there's a funny story there, because I did a session only a few weeks ago with a great friend of mine, Simon Houlihan, who I worked with. He's a great musician, but he's a videographer now as well. He was filming a live session, and he's now got a dog, and the dog had to come along. Quite a long story, but therefore his mum came along to look after the dog. I know his mum very well.
Who looked after his mum?
and it was great. She was at the session, and it was a lovely session because we knew the players and we've known each other for years. And it's a live shoot, live playing. The vibe's good. And about halfway through the day, and she said, "You don't do much, do you?"
Just sit there.
Just twiddling knobs.
And do you know what? It's because all the work is the bulk of the work is done out of sight. Out of sight, and it's setting up that thing. Actually, I mean, obviously there's cabling to get up and get the session rolling. But once the session's rolling, once it's moving, and especially if it's a live jazz session with all people playing in the room, there is fairly little to do, hopefully, fingers crossed if there's no technical issues. You see what I mean? But I just thought it was really fun. And she was right, really, because she didn't, she's just like...
You've done it all.
Oh, it's done. Yeah. Really. And that's really my point earlier, saying about creating a stress-free environment. And really, that's what you want. If people, you know what it's like. If you can be comfortable and let's face it, it's difficult to do that when you're pressurising yourself.
Because you have to bring yourself into this zone, literally this zone where you're delivering, and it's just like this, but it's a environment that is a little bit unnatural, right? Because when we perform in front of audience, people, we there is a special connection there.
Yeah, definitely.
In the studio, you're trying to sort of imagine the imaginary listener.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit more difficult, I think.
But I have to say, following on from what you were saying, that, you know, a good sound engineer and good equipment is worth its weight in gold, because I've done a few sessions, you know, where that hasn't quite been right, and not with Juan, but, you know, back in the day, and there's nothing more soul destroying than like giving everything you've got to a performance and then hearing it back, and the saxophone is just, there's no soul, you know, there's no heart. And, you know, with the sax, what I love is when you capture like the breath, you know, in the reed sound and in all of it. It's not just what's coming out the bell, you know, it's all of it. And, you know, when you capture it right, like you say, when you hear it back, it makes you cry, because you think, that's just beautiful.
You're capturing that, maybe to get everybody in that room at that time. Sometimes, as you were saying earlier, you know, so that some projects can take so long. So you may have a track that it might take months to get in to get done. And then suddenly you get in and you capture that magic, or you think you capture the magic. You know, and then say you look back or listen back and you're like, and you know, working in Crescent Studio, you wouldn't have that, would you? You'd capture magic.
Well, I like to capture magic, and that actually makes me think about another thing that I think is worth mentioning, is because we're all looking for perfection, right? And actually, although people might think I'm chasing perfection like that, I'm actually not. And I think
Performance.
It's a performance, and performances aren't perfect.
No.
And when we witness a great concert or a gig, they're never perfect. And you know what? Sometimes that element of whatever's happened, and that's what makes it special, because each performance is different, even if it's the same song. And I think things should change. You know, if you're on the road, sometimes we're on the road for a month. And the great, I work with Leo Lyons from Tennis After, and we do these tours. It's wonderful. We know the songs. We've recorded albums, right? That's the song, but we're still improvising within that.
Because that's what makes it fun. That gives it a bit of life, a bit of humanity in there. I mean, you've recorded at Crescent Studios, haven't you?
Yeah. But
how was it working there? Now we talking about this, you know.
It was great working there. Yeah, it was great working there, and I think, definitely what you said, Damon, about this perfection. This is something I also learned from these sessions, because on one hand side, you as an artist, you're going to chase some perfection of your craft, because you don't want to sort of show off mistakes in your craft, right? But at the same time, this continuity, say playing a track that is, I don't know, 6 minutes long or whatever the Doors was, 6 minutes long.
That was long.
And from start to end,
That's
and
intense, right?
neither of us wanted to cut it. It had to be from start to the end. So, you know, so many times I would try, and then you would say, oh, but this is okay, so we'll leave it on file, but I'm going to push for more. So another one. I mean, within the session, another try. And you get to the point where you're just not moving forward. You're just going down. And this is the time where you just need to stop, walk away, and I need to stop painting this picture. And then walk away and listen to it. But then I struggle with the listening. Once I produce the video and put it out there, it's something that I can't listen to. I can't listen to it for a month or so.
Often, and I mean, sometimes an album, as you know, a jazz album may be recorded in 2 days if it's live. It might be mixed in a day or 2 days, and you know, 4 or 5 days and an album could be out there. Different genres. I mean, I've got an album I'm doing with a client at the minute, and we've probably been on this for nearly 2 years probably. Now that's not constant, obviously. I'm doing all sorts of other sessions and there's gaps in between. But it's still a lot of time and effort, and a bit like you were saying with yours, it's an ongoing thing. And they're very different. But there is something about committing, you know, on a live session like that. There's something about capturing that moment. And it is a moment in time. Don't forget, when we're recording like that, we're kind of capturing...
It never comes back.
It never comes back. Only it does come back. As in, it's going to be a record.
You'll get to relive it.
But there's several things that happen, and I think often you as the artist have a preconceived idea of a piece or a track or a composition. And let's bear one thing in mind. So you have these preconceptions of what that track's going to be. If it's slightly different, and I mean slightly.
From the producer or the person recording or the
master.
master.
Or just slightly different to what was in your head before, the preconceived idea.
Yeah.
The listener doesn't know that.
No.
True.
It's always worth bearing in mind.
This is
but we have to come to terms with
you
it.
have to come to terms with
pushing that part.
That's right, and I totally agree with that. But do you see what I mean? Sometimes you're pushing for something like, oh, no, it has to be like this. And sometimes that different thing, I'm not saying it always the case, but it can be something special that may only happen that once.
That's right.
That one
and you
time
might lose out, or you think you're adding. It's like a painter, isn't it? Who thinks, "Oh, I think I've finished." When people walk past the painting, go, "Oh my God, that's amazing!" You go, "It's not finished." That's and they're like, "Well, why? What?"
Yeah.
And I suppose it's that as a musician, you're kind of. Do you put it out and flavour it? Do you get a gist of what people think of it? I suppose if you're working with an artist,
can I ask the table, or the room, shall we say? Have you ever put on a record and actually listened and not quite connected with it, and kind of, it's not that you're not enjoying it at all, but there's something you can't quite put your finger on. You know,
Star Trek springs to mind, or something along them lines.
But I suppose the point I'm making is it sometimes music is overproduced.
For sure.
And it becomes this kind of shiny thing, you know, which all, you know, at the front, the first point looks really attractive. And then when you delve into it, it's like, oh, actually it's a little bit shallow and there's not much depth here.
Yes.
And after a while you don't connect with it. Now, on the flip side to that, I think often you can get kind of quite raw records. You know, maybe they might sound a little bit unfinished, but you know, there's an emotional connection there, and that tear thing, or that that really gets
the cylinder recordings.
Sometimes it's out of tune. Sometimes
from Bob Marley's old recordings, the old cylindrical recordings, sort of had that. I remember listening to some of that. Yeah, I agree with you completely.
Beautiful.
And
sorry, I was just going to add to that I think often the job of a producer, as well as being the overall kind of quality control, if you like, and project management, is also to help shape that. And actually, no, I've been lucky. I've worked several albums I've done with Mike Vernon, who was a famous blues producer. He did early Fleetwood Mac records, 10 years after, all kinds of stuff, lots of other stuff, and he ran Blue Horizon Records, you know, famously. And I was lucky enough to work with him. Now, in that case, I was definitely engineering. I was button pushing, and I learnt that very quickly, because I remember a couple of times speaking, and it's like, oh, hang on, this isn't the etiquette, is it? I'm not producing. I'm not in the chair, you know. And then I learnt to sort of sit back and just watch him, you know. And I thought was one massive thing that I learnt from watching Mike was often he would move at a great rate. You know, because obviously it's time management as well. Part of the gig is time management and budgets, right? Often there isn't time, but he knew when he had something and when he could push on. Yeah. And then equally, I saw him put people right through the mill for an 8-bar piece, for an 8-bar solo, or do you see what I mean? And after an hour of working on maybe 4-bar section, and you're thinking, whoa. But he knew that record wasn't right until he got that 8-bar section or
was
whatever,
better
for example.
that.
Do you see what, and I think that's the job of a producer. And sometimes you will feel on a big journey in any recording, sometimes you'll feel like the producer might be pushing you or rushing you a little bit, and other times you might feel like you're going through treacle. But that's, you know, there has to be a trust between the artist and the producer. If there's no trust there,
absolutely,
it will never work.
But you see, I'm such a control freak, which is why I've always produced all my own albums, because it's like, I'm really open to like hearing what people say, and that's why I like the honesty, like even fellow musicians.
It has to be honest.
Yeah, and I really like to take on board what everybody says, but I do ultimately like to, you know, be in charge of what happens.
And I think that's fine. So in that case, you're probably either co-producing maybe with someone else, or you are producing it and everyone's work. But yeah, I do think it's important to have someone in the chair. Because I think we've all probably
too many cooks spoil the broth.
Too many cooks.
See, that's where Mike comes into his own. I'll wake him up, you know, in the middle of the session and say, "Oh, just listen to this. What do you think of this?" And he'll go, "Nah, you can do that better." That's it.
He just opens his eyes.
Yeah,
just do it again.
You can do that again.
It's, you know, I think it can be a massive teamwork, but I think because definitely. it can be a difficult decisions to make and a pathway to carve through. And equally, I mean, we've all seen the documentaries of bands in the studio and heard the stories and the arguments. And
We've left a few of them recently, and we're planning to do a live recording in the new year.
Yes.
So
That would be amazing.
yeah. Bear that in mind.
Yeah.
but that's the thing, and the recording will always be a compromise. We wish it wouldn't, but do you know what I mean? It has to be a compromise.
Or it's something else, isn't it?
But the compromise is, if there's 5 people in a band, you are never going to get 5 people to totally agree on a direct. Do you see what I mean? And thereby, that's why sometimes a producer is literally sitting in the room just waiting for something to flare up and just putting out. I call it putting out fires. There's a little, and really foresight and part of my job actually when I meet people for the first time and they come down the stairs, especially if it's several people in an outfit and not just one artist, it is very quickly. Okay, right. People give themselves
spotting the
away.
troublemakers.
Well, it's not really. I mean, that sounds negative, spotting the troublemakers, but I know what you mean. But really, what it is about is me being aware of the different personalities.
Yeah, the dynamics. There's always different dynamics.
There's always different dynamics.
Yeah, there is.
And really, as far in front as I can be to put those, or see the fire. The best thing to do is see the fire before it starts.
Yeah.
Okay, and you could just put them out. And because let's face it, any negativity like that is just, or if people are standing around, sometimes they're, oh no, I think we should be going to the chorus there or the bridge. If you could spend 45 minutes doing
it's
that.
like having a referee, basically.
Yeah, blowing the whistle.
Have you had any instances of that? Any kind of real strong altercations? I mean, there must be something.
I wish I had some drama I could throw into the conversation here. But I don't know. I mean, all my band members, my musicians, are people I've worked with a very long time. And you soon learn as you go on the journey. The musicians that you gel with and that you want to work with more. Yeah. And like you say, there's always different dynamics. I mean, we're all completely different. But we've never, I mean, touch wood, we've never had any kind of like major catastrophes or arguments or anything. I mean, it's got a bit heated at times. I mean, especially with the sort of the live recording thing, when you've got the stress. And it's that feeling, isn't it, when you're almost at the end of the piece and you're trying to concentrate on playing the best you can, but your brain is saying, right, you mustn't mess this up now because, we've almost got to the end, but you're going to mess it up because your brain's saying you mustn't mess it up. And it's kind of stressful, isn't it? But no, we've always, thankfully, always kind of got on all right. I mean, I've probably just doomed it now, haven't I, for my next project?
I believe in those.
Speaking of projects, back to your new album. The soundtrack for your new album is going to be. Your new album is the soundtrack to the Brighter Tomorrow for the Arts.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about
Well, it's very difficult when people say, tell us about Brighter Tomorrow, because it's a project that I started coming out of lockdown and it kind of became this incredibly vast project. So I never really know how to explain it. It was basically, coming out of lockdown, I felt real kind of like almost a responsibility to fellow creatives, to the people that work in the arts, to almost celebrate them, because I think we all kind of felt a little bit downtrodden, didn't we? And a little bit disrespected, dare I say it, and sort of, I don't know, I just had this passion that people who work in the arts need to be celebrated, not just the musicians and the people in the front line, but the people behind the scenes, today, and the sound guys.
The amount of work that goes in.
The people, it's incredible. Yeah, people working behind the scenes. So I set about this celebration, Brighter Tomorrow for the Arts, which you can find out on socials, just a hashtag Brighter Tomorrow for the Arts. And I'm doing gigs or anything to do with the arts. I said, use a hashtag because it's a celebration, it's a community. And it kind of grew and grew and grew. And because I'm a very proud member of Women in Jazz Media, who publish these wonderful online magazines every so often, I had an idea that I'll publish this online magazine. I'd never done it before in my life, so I had to learn all the technology, how to put a magazine together.
It was amazing.
Online.
You could just turn a page and it was a proper magazine.
It was a proper magazine.
Yeah.
I mean, you have no idea. I mean, my good friend Fiona Ross from Women in Jazz Media, hi Fiona, basically gave me a sort of a day with her to show me how to do it, and I sat and created this 300-page online magazine celebrating people like yourself.
Thank you so much. I was very privileged to be there.
Yeah. And there's photographs in there, you know, musicians in there, everything, photographers. It's wonderful. And anyway, and the project keeps evolving, and I've got gigs, you know, to do with it. And I just kind of thought, well, a good kind of like finale. I mean, I say finale, but it probably won't be, because I'll probably continue the project anyway. But I thought, well, yeah, you know, all this music that I've created should come out as the kind of the soundtrack, you know.
End of scene
Yes.
on it.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It tells the story, because like on my album, you know, one of the tracks is called Gonna Be Alright, Gonna Be Okay, which I wrote at the start of the pandemic, you know, from reassurance to myself, you know, it's gonna be alright, gonna be okay. And then Crazy Times was another one that I did in the pandemic as well, when I did a big community video of celebrating, well, not celebrating, but, you know, celebrating people coming back together after these crazy times.
Yes.
And I've done a remix of that track with the incredible trombonist Ashley Slater.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
nice.
Crazy Times is now going to be called Tiempos Locos on my
Brilliant.
album. Yeah, so it's kind of the soundtrack,
Yeah.
to the project.
Fantastic. And you have worked with Leanne Carroll and on this Tomorrow's Song.
Yeah.
Not sure if we're able to. Okay.
No, we haven't.
Tomorrow's Song.
They are available on YouTube, and they're online, aren't they?
Yeah, a few of the tracks are
Available.
already out there. So
Yeah.
Tomorrow's Song is out. I wrote some lyrics, and I asked Leanne Carroll if she would
Is it
perform
Ray
it with me.
Galato as well?
And Ray Gelato is,
Gelato.
he's on a couple of tracks as well, because he's phenomenal.
I mean, how do you get to meet these people? How we're saying, you know, how. So this is the whole thing, networking, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the idea of working with people is all about these small little connections you make. I mean,
Some
That's
of
a
them are
big connection.
spontaneous and
Yeah.
there's a
accidental.
big connection to make. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
we sometimes work through certain areas to make yourself available to somebody. How did you do that? How did you make these contacts?
Well, you know, I'm a firm
Don't mind.
believer in fate. You know, things will be what they're going to be. But I've always really, really followed my dreams, and I'm all about telling people follow your dreams. You know, and it's as simple as. And I did a concert in London. It was literally the last gig I did in memory of my late mum, and I wanted to make it a special night. It was at the Pizza Express Live Soho, and I'd written just ask him.
Well, you asked the universe
Yeah.
first, didn't you? And then
I asked him, will he say yes?
Yeah.
Yes, he will. Right, I'm going to ask him. Well, I asked him, you know, and he said yes.
And the story with Pee Wee Ellis, it was something similar that you asked.
Well, so Pee Wee was a little bit more. I had to work a bit harder for Pee Wee, bless him, because I did contact and said, I would really love to spend some time studying with you and learning with you, thinking that, you know, he's either going to say yes, I teach, or no, I don't teach. But the answer was yes, I do teach, but I need to audition you first to see whether I want to teach you. So now I'm thinking, oh, okay, oh dear. Thinking he's probably going to say, well, thank you, but no thank you. But lovely Pee Wee, you know, he obviously saw something in me where I wanted to learn from him, and he did. He agreed to teach me and took me under his wing, and I learned so much from him. But it is, I think, all about asking. You know, people will either say yes or they'll say no, but
Daring to ask.
ask.
Because
Daring
what
to
can
ask.
happen?
Because we're all in it
Yes or
together,
no?
and musicians want to work.
Yes.
You know, and if you're offering something that's nice, you know, come along to a gig or be on a recording, if they've got time and they fancy it, they'll say yes. And you know, chance
You've
you're
got to be
on.
out there toiling away with
Yeah,
it. And
you
that's
have-
it. The
you
doors
have.
are like, they'll keep opening and closing as you go through.
do
and
think-
somebody's on the other side. And
Yeah, definitely.
I think you've got to put yourself out there,
You have.
and you know, when things are on, you know, events or anything like that, or other shows, go out and meet people and go and support people's shows.
Absolutely.
Don't you think?
Yeah,
and that's where
absolutely.
It's a
you're
cycle.
always going to
Yeah,
meet
if
There
you
is
someone.
a cycle
can.
to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Always going to meet someone. And,
Yeah. But any fellow creatives, do use the hashtag Brighter Tomorrow for the arts.
Yeah.
Share your gigs, share your videos, share your recordings.
Yeah,
You
get
know,
them
because
in,
it's a
bring them
celebration.
in.
We're a community. We're all
That's
in
what
it
NAP's
together.
all about, if anything.
And
it's
yeah,
the
this is
perfect,
great.
It's a perfect
Nexus.
thing. We
Yeah.
are literally, you know, mirroring exactly what you're doing.
Exactly.
And it's just amazing to actually
Yeah.
have you on and you as well, Damon.
No,
Honestly,
thanks
I
for
mean,
It's been an
inviting me down.
absolute
It's
pleasure.
I don't know whether we are on
Beautiful.
time. I'm sure we've got probably a little bit
Wait.
more time, to be fair.
Ooh.
I mean, we could go into depths of so many
Yeah.
avenues in the work and the realms you work with. I mean, just saying earlier on who you'd work with. I mean, I was astounded. I was looking through. I mean, you work with musicians that work with Free, Manfred Mann. I mean, Muddy Waters. I mean,
Benny
Benny
King.
King. I mean, this
Benny
is
King was an interesting one.
this is. I mean, it's not just about name dropping, ladies and gentlemen. Those that are either listening or watching live. this is to show that you'd never know. I mean, what is it called? The 7 degrees of separation.
Oh, yeah.
We've all got somebody that we know locally, and especially in this, I was celebrating the idea of Swindon before. I'm from Manchester. I live in Swindon. I came here 30 years ago. There's a hotbed, a plethora of wonderful creatives in this town.
Absolutely, it's a super
To think
vibrant
you could be working with these
town
people.
for original music as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
To think you're working with these people.
Well, and it's great
to
what
sit
you're
you having
doing.
Chat here, like, and it's great because you're not unrealistic. You seem like a really genuine, lovely chap, and a wonderful, lovely lady too.
Oh,
Are we going to get a chance to actually have a play and do a little something then, Matt Howard?
Could we do a little something?
We're all quite nervous about this. We have no idea what we're doing.
You're blown away with that little the intro of the track.
Oh, it's simple.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to bring the end to the end of the show.
We're not bringing the end to the world.
No, we're not.
Yeah.
But we're gonna try a little something.
gonna
Are you
vibe.
up for hitting a little something?
I'll hit something, but I have
Don't
to
hit me,
say,
Damon.
I
I'm
don't
not
want to do
giving you
that.
any boxes, Damon.
You know, if I hear something, only if I feel I can add something. If not, I'm just going to listen because I'd like
It's
to
just
listen.
down there.
Yeah, well,
You
I'm going to
can
be
do
the
whatever you
same.
like.
I've no idea what's going to happen here.
I don't know.
But can you?
And you do, and exactly
This is
the same. You're under
real
no pressure. You
improv.
can either listen
Yeah.
or input. It's purely improvised. Exactly right.
I might have to. I can't quite squeeze in.
I can move a little. Totally unrehearsed, so it's like a little bit of fun and a little bit of finding the love isn't enough. Someone your life. I can't change. I won't lie. I won't wait for the break. That's in the time I found love. I found love. Indeed, I found it. You know I got it 'cause you want it all. Well, I'll be buying you flowers, baby. In the morning, yeah. I know that it's on the wonderful sun. It's a wonderful cut. It feels funny to kiss you, and it's making me smile. Yeah. It's bringing it down, making me song. It's making me wild. I can't change. I won't lie. I can't wait for the break, the passing of time. I found love. I found love. Indeed, I found it. You know I want it 'cause you got it all. The heartbeat stops. I'm waiting, tell no lie.
Beautiful.
Well done.
Yay!
Nice.
Can we pull our crackers now?
Where's that cracker? That was fabulous.
Is it Christmas?
Thank you. That was great fun.
Great fun.
Enjoyed that.
I can go and get the crackers.
Shall I go and get crackers? Shall I click my
How was
fingers?
that? Is that us done? Did we prematurely done? Are we done?
Done.
Oh, we're fading out.
Ah. Bye.